Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Mapecontact SRT, a new and novel approach for wood flooring. We have some brief housekeeping before we start. Your phones are muted. If you have any questions, please type them into the Q&A box in the corner of your screen, and we'll answer them at the end of today's session, time permitting, or via an email after. And you can always send questions to mapeidigital@mapei.com. We also invite you to visit the Floor Covering and Installation Systems page and the Products for Wood Flooring page on our website, www.mapei.com, where we have videos, projects, downloads, and more about adhesives and wood flooring solutions. It's a lot of information, and it's all overseen by today's speaker, the business manager for MAPEI's Floor Covering and Installation Systems product line, Jeff Johnson. Jeff brings to the industry more than 35 years experience in the development and marketing of floor covering installation products. His practical experience in the construction industry and as a bench chemist give him an insightful perspective on surface preparation, moisture mitigation, and floor covering installation. Today, he's going to share information about Mapecontact SRT, our tape technology, and how, as he puts it, it can help stop wood floor installation insanity. So without further delay, Jeff, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jen, and welcome everyone. And again, thank you all for taking a little bit of time out of your busy schedules to learn a little bit something new about one of the products that I find very interesting and part of the FCIS product portfolio. For those of you who have listened to this kind of information before, hopefully this will be a refresher course, but hopefully you'll all learn something new going forward. And as always, I look forward to your questions towards the end of the presentation. So let's go ahead and get started. And I'm going to start by just thinking a little bit about change and the way of doing things differently. And I remember when the only way to get from point A to Z was by going on that infamous road trip. When we look back at our youth, my youth particularly, grew up in Colorado, and we did an awful lot of these road trips. And we'd get in the back of the Chevrolet station wagon, pack up the cooler, and head off towards parts unknown, California, the Banff National Forest in Colorado, in Canada, and so on and so forth. But the only way really to do that was by car, the old famous road trip. And I know some of those are still kind of fun to do in a nostalgic manner. As times changed and we all grew, and the need to get from one place to another faster became more imperative, we all tried something new. We got on a plane. And I can remember my first shot at a plane, and I think, quite frankly, it was not a family-related thing. I think it was a business-related trip I took for the first time, wandering on a plane. And I think for those of you who have had that same experience, it was all pretty big, wide-eyed, kind of, oh my God, we're actually going to be in the air. And remember that old adage, if men were meant to fly, God would have given him wings, kind of thing. And you're going, I'm going to go up in this giant aluminum tube and 30,000 feet in the air, and it's going to come down safely. I mean, it's a little bit apprehensive where you're trying something new. Well, that's what kind of the whole theme of today's presentation with Mapecontact SRT is, to try something new. And there are some things to benefit out of trying something new. You might be able to get there faster, which is the reason why a lot of us do travel these days by plane to get from point A to Z. You might do it with a little bit less mess. You might do it with a little less energy involved in terms of schlepping around big buckets of glue and all that kind of stuff. You might be able to do it with less tools. And you might be able to get from one point of the installation to the end a lot faster. So it is new, it is different. And I think it's something for you to consider. For those of you who are installers or contractors on the audience, I would seriously encourage you to take a look at this as an alternative method for the installation of wood flooring. For those of you who are in the sales force, let's talk about how we can convince the younger generation why they might want to look at this versus the old way of doing things going forward. So the whole point here is Mapecontact SRT is something totally new and different. And this is not, again, earth-breaking, earth-shattering newsworthy stuff. We've been doing this kind of installation method for resilient flooring for quite a few years with the introduction of Mapecontact MRT. That product in the commercial environment has gained a tremendous following and a lot of success stories involved. And the commercial flooring contractor has bought into it hook, line, and sinker for the many value added that the product brings to the installation. The same thing can be true of Mapecontact SRT. So let's just start off a little bit by asking you all some rhetorical question. Is just, why do we install flooring? I think that's a dumb question, but if you really think of the answer, the real answer is, audience says, to make money. And that is really why we're in this industry, whether we're in the business of supplying installation materials, supplying floor covering, or installing floor covering. The whole goal of this is to get paid. That's very important. And the sooner you complete these jobs, the sooner you're going to get paid. The sooner you have a successful installation that requires no callbacks or touch-ups or fixes, the sooner you're going to make that paycheck, and the less money you're going to have to waste fixing stuff long term. So, keep in mind that when we talk about new stuff, new ways of doing things, the whole goal is to hit that make money button faster so that you can install something quicker, get on to the next job faster, and get paid for things, as we like to say, as quickly as possible. So let's take a few minutes reminiscing about vintage installation methods. We'll go back to my photograph of that old 60-something Chevrolet station wagon. Traditional floor covering installation techniques are, as we say, traditionally burdened by a lot of stuff that has to be done. You need to do moisture testing. You got to drill holes for probes. You got to scarify the surface for a calcium chloride test. You've got to understand what those readings mean. And if there's over the limits of the flooring that you're installed, you got to put a moisture mitigation system in it. And all that stuff takes time, energy, labor time, etc. And not to mention the fact that it takes a lot of time between the recording of the moisture level information and the remediation. There's days involved between when you discover there's a problem and then when actually we can get to the point of installing the floor covering. I mean, if we take a look at our traditional epoxy moisture mitigation membranes that are oftentimes called for to control moisture issues with concrete substrates, there's easily a day for shot blasting. There's another 24 hours to leave the surface open for off-gassing, to allow the concrete to breathe, if you will. There is another 8 to 10 hours for the epoxy coating to be applied and to cure. There's another couple hours for a primer to be installed, and then there's a leveler that needs to go on top of that. How many days have I added up there already? I mean, on average, at minimum, it's a 3-day event for 1,000 square feet of installation. You imagine if it gets bigger than that, it's going to take even more time. Again, that's time spent not installing the floor. That's just getting ready to install the floor. So there's an additional time involved in that. Well, with the Mapecontact products that we've introduced to the family, and particularly this one, the Mapecontact SRT, which stands for sound reduction tape, they are double-sided, high-performance tapes that do not require moisture testing. They're suitable for concrete slabs up to 25 pounds of moisture, 100% RH. pH has got to be less than 12, concrete like 5 days old. They provide their own moisture vapor barrier as well as a bonding solution, and allow for instant flooring installation with a minimum of prep and also allow for instant utilization of that floor. So again, if we're talking about the green make money button, these are the ways to get to that paycheck a lot faster. Okay. The whole point here is that we now have means and methods available to expedite that floor covering installation, to expedite the prep, expedite the install, expedite the reuse of that facility, and be able to get to your paycheck that much faster. And again, that's what the Mapecontacts are all done. They're designed to get across the finish line faster, increase efficiencies, potentially early job completion bonuses. In some cases, if you're in a commercial environment, I think there are some incentives to get the job done faster and then be able to get on the next job sooner. And by the way, this scene comes from that movie Ford versus Ferrari, which talks a lot about ingenuity and competitiveness and being able to get across the finish line faster. Highly recommend the movie. Sorry, a little plug for a movie on the outside. If you haven't seen that, I'd highly recommend it. A great storyline. Anyway, we're talking about specifically here is Mapecontact SRT, the sound reduction, moisture resistant tape for resilient and wood flooring installation. I mean, it is a double-sided foam core dry film tape for rapidly and permanently installing solid vinyl sheet, vinyl tile, vinyl plank, as well as pre-engineered, finished, engineered, and solid wood. The foam core is very important for wood flooring applications because of the nature of the wood flooring itself. The backing is not always smooth and flat. In many cases, they're curve cut or they're grooved a little bit. You've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. There's some grooves in the back of the wood to help handle the stability of the material as well. But those are very difficult to bond to a very thin film. So the foam tape aspect of it here, and this is a 1/16 of an inch thick, is able to compress and expand a little bit into those voids and increase the overall bond. So that's why that's there. And that also, that foam portion of the tape is the mechanism by which we get some really good sound attenuation data points, which we'll talk a little bit later on in the presentation. So it's been specifically designed for instant bonding and instant utilization of residential commercial floor installations. It's unaffected by high moisture conditions in concrete and can be installed without moisture testing. It can also be used to install over traditional and approved wood underlayments, if you need to go that point. Obviously, if you're doing most wood installations over a wood subfloor or nailed down, staple down type of an application, but if you want to, this product Mapecontact SRT can be used for that as well. And obviously, the main factor of this is, since it is a polyethylene foam system, it's going to have a permeability factor associated with it. It's going to keep moisture from moving through and causing any kind of damage to the wood from subfloor moisture. Having said that, it has to go. I have to say that if you overwater the top of the wood by inappropriate cleaning practices, I'm sorry, I can't help you with that. But subfloor moisture, we got it covered. So the benefits of the product, let's kind of run through them as well. They're at the maximum level as far as I'm concerned. It has an infinite working time. Infinite in the fact that as long as you keep the foam tape covered with that blue release liner, go back to this picture again, that blue that you see in the screen actually comes off on the right-hand side where you'll see me actually doing work for a change, installing wood flooring there. Yes, that's me. That once you pull that blue release liner off and expose the white foam adhesive coated surface, that's when the rubber meets the road, more or less. So as long as you keep that blue release liner on the surface of the tape, you'll have an infinite working time. And I will urge you and caution you to leaving that tape covered as long as you're not using it. If you happen to step on an open field of Mapecontact SRT with your shoes, it will rip your shoes off. followed by your socks off, by the bottoms of your feet off. Very sticky, very aggressive stuff. So do keep it covered and avoid walking on it. It is freeze-thaw stable. I think it's very important to know that this product has a range of usability from something like minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit up to 240 degrees Fahrenheit, a wide range of usability. So if I'm covering over my MAPEI logoed shirt when I say this, if you need to install wood flooring at 12 degrees Fahrenheit, this is the only way to do it. It's that has that level of performance. These kinds of products like Mapecontact SRT are used in a wide variety of applications, including exterior bonding of metal surfaces, and in a lot of cases like using for the wind foils on top of a semi-tractor trailer truck. A lot of that is put together with these kind of foam tapes. The emblems on your cars are not put on there with rivets anymore. They are usually bonded with some sort of version of these double-sided high-performance acrylic tape systems. So it's freeze-thaw stable, and it takes all sorts of heat and it takes all sorts of cold without fracture or movement. They're instant usability. And once the flooring is installed on Mapecontact SRT, you can move the furniture right back in. The grand piano goes right back where it was. The heavy sofas, the dining room tables, the chairs, the people all go back into it. Compare that to traditional installation systems, whether it be urethane adhesives or MS adhesives. All of those take some time to cure out and before you can allow traffic to be on them. I think at minimum, we're talking about protecting things for 12 to 24 hours prior to putting light traffic on. But Mapecontact SRT is totally suitable for heavy traffic immediately after it's installed. Another great advantage, it's zero VOC. I mean, this stuff is not a liquid, it's a tape. There is no SDS associated with this since it's not a chemical compound that has to evaporate, cure, or do whatever it has to do to be final stage. It is finished tape. So it's a zero VOC and got a lot of good advantages because of that. For those of you who are in the environmental mode, the entire packaging components of Mapecontact SRT are recyclable. The box that it shipped in is recyclable, obviously. The blue polyethylene liner is recyclable. The cardboard core is recyclable. So every bit of packaging material can be put in a recycle bin and not just thrown into a landfill. It's acoustic dampening. As I mentioned before, that foam center of Mapecontact SRT provides some really good acoustic dampening characteristics. Better than, excuse me, any of our urethanes or MS adhesives. And in many cases, better than combined levels of reground rubber or some of our asphaltic membrane materials as well. We'll again talk about the specifics on that a little bit later on. The other advantage is that it is a 100% moisture vapor barrier product by itself. And keep in mind that we have, compare that to adhesives that we have in a bucket that are applied by a trowel, where we make sure we inform you in order to get the full benefit of these products, you have to have a 100% monolithic layer of glue. Sometimes that's very difficult to achieve without a lot of extra effort. Well, here the tape comes out in a giant sheet, 30 inches wide, and creates a uniform monolithic layer across the floor quite easily. You don't have to worry about gaps or pinholes or voids in the system. It's all going to be totally covered. And it also provides a little bit of cushioning value to it. Now that may or may not be important to you, but sometimes the way things feel underfoot does have an impact on the overall feel of the floor. Additional benefits I mentioned before, we've got that releasable system. Everything is recyclable. There's no smell, no VOCs, infinite working time, and shelf life. That is another very important aspect. It doesn't necessarily need to be stored in a protected environment. You know, I think every adhesive that we have out there says you've got to store it in a warehouse that's between 40 degrees and 90 degrees Fahrenheit. This tape you could leave in your van in Wisconsin in the middle of the winter at -5 degrees outside, and it's going to be totally fine. It's unaffected by those kind of temperatures. Instant functionality we've talked about, and there's no cleanup. Again, here we're talking about something that's laid on the floor. You pull back the release liner, install the floor covering. There's no goop to get on your fingertips that are going to get on the surface of the wood flooring. No necessarily need to clean up, no need to have a can of mineral spirits or WD-40 to clean your trowels, to clean your surface of the wood flooring, and so on and so forth. You won't need to deal with that. And definitely there's no trowels involved. Again, not a huge expense, but trowels do wear out. In the cases of our products like Eco 995 or 985, you need to use a trowel clip associated with that. A lot of shenanigans, if you will, that are involved in the application of a liquid adhesive for wood flooring compared to Mapecontact SRT. Another little benefit that you need to consider in light of what's happened to us over the last couple of years, particularly in the supply chain environment, when we were having massive difficulty in providing urethanes and MS adhesives or even water-based adhesives during that crisis, the tape systems were always available. You know, it's not necessarily a problem for us today, and hopefully we'll never have to face that, what do we call that, perfect storm where supply chain issues, COVID pandemics, the great freeze in Texas, which shut down all the urethane plants that were making the raw materials that we needed to use, and so on and so forth. Hopefully that will never happen again. But if it does, you can always count on the fact that these tape products are available for use. And one of the benefits that I didn't put on the slide, and I keep forgetting to mention to you, is that these are relatively lightweight products. The roll that you see that was being installed back a few slides is approximately 200 square feet. I'm sorry, 500 square feet per roll. I think it's 500 square feet per roll. I've got to get my math right. And it weighs maybe 40 pounds. To compare the same amount of urethane adhesive to do the same job, you would need something you order 220 to 240 pounds of urethane adhesive to do the same job. So I don't know about you, but I'd rather throw a 40-pound roll of tape over my shoulder as opposed to schlepping a bunch of 72-pound buckets of Eco 995 to the job. Anyway, those are some of the benefits of the MRT. Where Mapecontact SRT fits within the line of MAPEI's wood floor installation materials, it's really at the top of the food chain for a wide variety of reasons. And for those of you who are MAPEI people, hopefully you'll understand and understand where we are with the product line. But we have 1, 2, 3, 4 urethane adhesives and 2 MS-based adhesives, all of which are great products, all of which do phenomenal jobs, but each one of them is a little bit different than the other. Of course, anything that's liquid applied has some protect from traffic requirements. You'll see down here 24 hours, 12 hours, 24 hours, 24 hours. So that goes to the immediate functionality of Mapecontact SRT. If you need to install wood flooring and you need to have it available for the evening holiday party, there's no way you're going to do that with any wet applied adhesive, but you can do it with SRT. Cleanup, as you can see here, it's either a urethane cleaner, solvent system like mineral spirits, but when it comes to SRT, there is no cleanup involved. The working time changes by these product lines as well. The open time all has some things to do about that. Mitigation is required for 4 out of 6 different wet applied adhesives and so on. But again, if you take a look at SRT on the right, it's got some pretty cool features and benefits associated with it. One important thing to look down here in the lower right-hand corner are those STC and IIC numbers. And we have all this stuff defined and available for you to look at on the technical data sheet available on the MAPEI website online. But the most important and interesting point to know about here is that delta number of 24. That is a very significantly statistically relevant number for acoustic dampening. Again, most of our urethanes and MS adhesives are in that 17 to 21 range. Mapecontact SRT beats it in a single application with the numbers of 24. Looking at those acoustics a little bit better, if you look at the STC, IIC, and the delta numbers, here's 985 in the upper left-hand corner under 3/4 inch solid wood flooring with an IIC of 17. 995 with 3/8 inch engineered is a 21. We can do luxury vinyl plank with Mapecontact 2 Eco 360 at a delta of 20. But if you look at SRT on 3/4 inch solid oak, the delta is 24. Compare that to 985, and that's a number of 7 increase in delta. That's pretty significant. Engineered oak flooring, 23 for an IIC on 3/8 inch, and luxury vinyl plank is 24 as well. So all of this is really good acoustics, and keep in mind that this is a single step application. If you go back to the luxury plank for traditional methods of including Mapecontact 2 or a 2mm Mapecontact RM, reground rubber, there are multiple steps and multiple layers of adhesive that got to go on there. Why go through all that hassle when you can do it with a single step with Mapecontact SRT? Where can you use the product? Virtually anywhere, as far as I'm concerned. Residential, commercial, multifamily, apartments and condos, anywhere where you install pre-finished engineered or solid wood is totally suitable for the use of Mapecontact SRT. No questions, no concerns. How does it work? What is the steps necessary for prepping and installing Mapecontact SRT? First and foremost, you've got to clean the substrate and remove all the debris of any. This is extremely important. All the dust has got to be taken off. If there are any defects in the subfloor, cracks, dips, divots, bird baths, gouges, and so on and so forth, all of those need to be filled using a high moisture resistant material like Planiprep PSC or Mapegem Quick Patch or Ultraplan Extreme 2 if you're going to level anything on top of that. But the reason why that's important is you're applying a moisture vapor barrier on the surface, and you want to make sure that your prep materials are suitable for that kind of application as well. So that's very important, and it's key to say that dust is the biggest problem for the installation of Mapecontact SRT or MRT as far as that goes. These products, as I mentioned before, are extraordinarily aggressive, very sticky stuff, and they're going to stick like gangbusters to dust. But dust, as you know, has no adhesive properties whatsoever, and so it's going to need something to remove it. Vacuum, using of a vacuum, using of a damp mop, something, whatever you can do to minimize the amount of dust on the floor prior to the installation of any of our tape products. Placement of Mapecontact SRT, and I will be quite honest with you and upfront with you, is a little bit of a learning curve. When I wrote the technical data sheet for Mapecontact SRT, I kind of wanted to leave that whole section of product application as you tell me. But in general, it's going to take a couple people to install it. Not one person can do this. You need somebody to help pull the roll of tape across the floor. And over on the right, you'll see our friend Tony Ziola helping me out with that project. Somebody to help place it on the floor and make sure that all the seams are lined up. Maybe a third person to help come behind and broom that stuff to the floor. When I say broom it, we're talking about the use of a shop broom to help press the tape down to the subfloor as tightly as you can. All right, so start in the middle, we talk about, and then work towards the walls. butt the seams together tight. You don't necessarily want to overlap them. If you do overlap them, you can double cut them to remove the excess and remove that excess, and you wind up with a smooth surface. And definitely broom or roll the surface to ensure proper contact. Again, these are all based on pressure sensitive adhesive systems, and pressure sensitive means that they work better the more pressure you put on them. So they like to be walked on. They need to be walked on. They prefer that you walk on them as soon as you get them on the floor. So one other last little note here, another benefit of the use of Mapecontact SRT for wood floor installation is I've never been more comfortable in my entire life on my knees installing any kind of flooring ever. I mean, you're actually working on a cushioned layer of material, a 16th inch foam system. So when you're running your knees across the floor, laying floor, it's one of the most delightful experiences you'll ever have compared to trying to schlep your bare knees on top of the bare concrete. Another little benefit I forgot to mention, but there you go. So anyway, the wood floor installation, I'm going to get a little bit more detail on this with some other slides, but one thing I'm mentioning, everybody's going to understand, when you put wood flooring together, it's a tongue and groove type of assembly. So you have to slide one piece into the other piece in order to install the floor covering. Now, if you can imagine trying to install wood flooring on a super sticky substrate that won't let you slide, you're going to have some problems. So what we're going to teach you in the next couple slides is how to install on that release liner, kind of like the old pull the tablecloth out from underneath the silverware trick, if you will. So there's a little bit of a trick to it. So how do we get started? First of all, let's talk about how Mapecontact should be placed on the floor. And we prefer that when you run the big rolls of Mapecontact across the floor, you run them in a perpendicular pattern to where the direction the wood flooring is going to go. So if you're running the wood flooring from left to right up here, you want the rolls of Mapecontact to go perpendicular. That's going to be important because as you pull the release liner out from underneath the wood flooring, you don't want to get it caught where you've got a seam right underneath a seam of the wood flooring. So this is the way to make it work. Run the Mapecontact perpendicular to the intended direction of the flooring, okay? The next thing you're going to do is pull back a little bit of that blue release liner off the surface of the floor and mark a chalk line, if you will, for the starter row at the distance that you're going to utilize for the expansion zone for this product, for the wood flooring you're installing. And you need to make sure you follow up with the installation instructions for the flooring manufacturers to what kind of expansion zone is needed. But suffice it to say that every wood flooring that I know of always requires an expansion zone of at least 3/8 of an inch to 1/2 an inch around the perimeter of the room. And that's just to compensate the fact that wood grows and shrinks, which changes the humidity. And if you put this up tight against the wall with no gaps, when the flooring expands because of increased humidity, it's going to push against the wall and it's going to cup it off the floor. Not a situation where you want to have. So again, mark the expansion zone, run a chalk line for starter row, expose the SRT just wide enough to allow you to install that first layer of wood along that line, okay? Next step is to, first of all, press your starter row into the material and get it down nice and tight, and then pull back the release liner about 1 inch away from the piece that you just installed. And then what you're going to do is bring another piece of wood flooring, place it on top of the release liner, slide it in to match it up so that the tongue and groove is properly seated and there are no gaps. And then once that is done, you're going to pull the release liner out from underneath that plank and allow the wood plank to drop into the adhesive bed. Once that's done, you're going to repeat that process of creating a open zone of SRT, and then you're going to add more rows of wood flooring, and pull the release liner out of it. And with some practice, you should be able to get to a point where you can put together perhaps 3 rows or multiple rows of wood flooring, all tight, put together, pressed together underneath, on top of that release liner, and simply pull that release liner and all 3 rows will drop in at one point. Again, when you think back to those photographs I showed you early in the presentation where Tony and I were doing that installation, that was, I think, a 3 1/4 inch engineered 3/8 inch wood plank. I was getting to the point where I was putting together 5 rows of material at one time and pulling the release liner out from underneath it. So you really can get some pretty significant production out of this with a little bit of experience. And that nifty release liner, in case you're needing something like this, can be simply flipped back over your installed wood flooring and act as some sort of a protectant to keep any kind of damage from occurring on top of that floor while you finish the installation. All right, I will say, and again, quite honestly, this chart is a little bit of a indication of your emotions, if you will, when you're trying to do something new and trying to look at how to do something new. Your first experience is going to be, wow, this is really cool. But when you start getting to it, you're going to start figuring out, oh, this is a bit different than what I've been doing before, and I'm not sure if I'm going to like it. I'm not going to do it. No way, no, not possible. But I'll keep trying, and then sooner or later, you're going to get to the hang of it, and it's like, I don't know why I was doing something like anything differently. We've had instances where commercial flooring contractors with our other tape system, the Mapecontact SRT, went through this same exact exasperation success curve. They were sold on the concept, thought it was a great idea. The first day on the job, they were calling our sales reps saying, how could you put me in this kind of a position? I've never seen something more complicated. But then the next morning we called them back, I figured it out. It's the greatest thing since sliced bread. I'll never use anything else. So it is a little bit of a learning curve. I will be honest with you. Those people that have been glue trowelers all of their lives are going to have a little bit of a hard time dealing with a new way of doing things. I'll give you that. But for the new people just getting in the trades, people whose needs are as bad as mine and getting on the floor are certainly going to take a look at this as a new way to get things done. And I would encourage you to do what you can to handhold people that are trying to learn how to do this. For those of you who are in the contractor world, I would highly recommend taking some time to learn how to do this, not on a real job perhaps, do your first project in your warehouse, your shop, just to get an idea how things work before taking out on the job site. But once you get the hang of these things, these are like taking a plane trip to California to go see Disneyland in Anaheim, as opposed to the long-term road trip that's there. All right, so with that, it's too late now, guys. You're stuck with me. Time for some questions and answers for the audience. Jen, back to you.
Thanks, Jeff. I loved your analogy of Disneyland. So we have a question here, and it's interesting. How much more of a concern for an indentation from heavy point loading is there when you're using SRT versus MRT? Is that a concern even? Does it depend?
Okay, for resilient sheet flooring, I would say yes, that's a little bit of a concern. For SRT underneath sheet vinyl or LVT products, it is cushiony. It is probably something to avoid a grand piano leg on top of this stuff.
But this is wood, so it's not
Yeah,
really.
for wood, it's not a problem. No, it's not a problem at all.
Perfect. That's kind of what I figured. Okay. So what is the roll size? That's another good question here. The roll size for Mapecontact SRT.
That's a very good question, and it's important to know that we offer this in 4 different sizes. the main product that you'll use is a 30-inch wide by 200-foot roll for something that's 500 square feet in a roll. But we also provide this in 1 foot, 6-inch, and 3-inch wide rolls. And there's a lot of different applications for those rolls that you might not think about. Certainly wood stair treads, repairs of wood, cove base, and so on and so forth, that these kinds of tapes would work perfectly well for as compared to other traditional methods. But and also you need to keep in mind that these things, like most installation materials, are not cheap. So you don't really want to waste a lot of it. So considering that each roll is about 2.5 feet, if you have a room that's 11 feet wide, you might want to get, of course, the 2.5 feet width rolls. That's the 30-inch version. 2.5 times 4 covers you 10 feet, and then a 1 foot strip, a 1 foot wide strip to finish the room, and you have a lot less waste than trying to use the full 2.5 feet and throw away the 1.5 feet that didn't fit. You understand what I'm saying there? But that's why we offered it in a variety of different shapes and sizes, beyond the other applications where foam tapes will work for other things besides wood.
And it is very sticky. We've used it to stick stuff on walls even.
Yes.
It's good stuff. Yeah. That was just a off-brand comment. Let's see. Another question. Do you have to do anything special with regards to the seams?
No, and I've asked that, I get that question quite a bit. As long as the seams are tight and butted up together, I'm totally fine with the moisture vapor barrier properties of that. There's a, that adhesive on the surface is very sticky. It's going to wind up kind of welding itself together. If you're that concerned about it, we have a 3-inch wide roll of Mapecontact SRT, the clear tape that you could put along the seam lines, and that would achieve a much better seal if you needed it. But we, in all of our experience with this product, that is not something we're concerned about. As long as the seams are tight and butted together tightly, there is no concern.
Good deal. Okay, let's see. Okay, oh, here's a good one. How do you repair a floor that's been installed with Mapecontact SRT? Because again, as I just said, it is very sticky.
Yeah, it is very sticky,
Yep.
and that does happen, whether the surface of the floor gets gouged or burned or something, and a piece needs to be replaced. The process is very similar that you would use for a traditional glue down wood flooring. You have to cut that piece of wood flooring out, and there's a technique available for doing that. But you pry all that damaged wood piece out using some utility knives and some razor scrapers. You're going to scrape off the SRT that's underneath that floor, get back down to clean concrete that's clean and free from any debris. You're going to cut your new piece of wood flooring to fit that hole. You're going to remove the bottom section of the groove that's in there, so that when you all the groove bottoms have to come out, because they're going to slide down on top of the tongues that were left. It's hard to explain. I hope you understand what I'm talking about visually. But use a piece of Mapecontact SRT in a 3-inch width or whatever you need that cuts to fit on the bottom of that piece of repair. And then when you're ready to place it, pull the release liner off, put the repaired plank back in place, step on it with your foot, and walk away with it. To compare that to traditional repair using an adhesive, you would have to apply urethane adhesive on the floor, construction adhesive, whatever, and weight that flooring piece down with books or some sort of a dead weight system to keep it from lifting up, because urethanes swell a little bit with moisture exposure, the off gas, and you really don't want it to raise up and create a little bit of a lippage issue there. So there's a weighting step involved. MRT, Mapecontact SRT, requires no waiting. It's back to business. It's all done as soon as you put the piece in, step on with your foot to get contact. It's ready to go.
Cool.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I think that should have answered it. If it didn't, please, send a follow-up and we will put that in writing. Let's see, wait a few minutes and see if there are any more questions. We have some time here left. If not, we'll bring this to a close, and people can always send any questions that they think of after the fact to us at MAPEI Digital at mapei.com. I know I always think of questions afterwards when I'm digesting the whole information. Jeff, thank you again for a fantastic presentation. You always provide so much information, and it really is enjoyable. And thank you, everybody in the audience here, for listening. We know that your days are very full, and we really do appreciate the fact that you spend this time with us. And we'd again like to remind you to check out the floor covering page at www.mapei.com, because there is just a wealth of information, and of course it includes information about Mapecontact SRT. So with that, I guess I will bring this webinar to a conclusion. Again, thank you, Jeff. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, thank you. And we will see you next time. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.